Hello, the evening news from the television company Ostankiно. First, briefly about the main events. The President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, stated that the agreement on civil peace will be signed on the 28th of April. Alexei Kazanyk announced his resignation from the post of Prosecutor General. The Parliament of Moldova has ratified the agreement on its entry into the CIS. The Prime Minister of Japan, Morihiro Hosokawa, announced his resignation because of accusations and involvements in financial machinations. The 30-year restoration of the frescoes of the Sistine Chapel have been completed. And now, details about these and other events. Work on the civil peace agreement will enter its final stages. This was stated in an interview to the Russian Information Agency by the President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin. In the opinion of the President, the signing of the agreement must first signify Russia's entry into the period of political stability. As the President predicts, so the society will receive clear criteria to assess the performance of all political forces, including extremists. Boris Yeltsin hopes that by the end of April, the work on the agreement will be completed. Its signing is planned for the 28th of April. Not wishing to become a source of confrontation between various political forces, this was the explanation of Alexei Kazanyk for his resignation from the Prosecutor General post. He announced his decision today at the Federative Council session. The decision of Alexei Kazanyk diffused the difficult situation in which the President and the Parliament found themselves after that the Federative Council on Wednesday, despite Boris Yeltsin's request, did not ratify the resignation of the Prosecutor General. 2 months ago, voluntarily leaving his post because of a conflict with the President over the State Duma's decision on amnesty, Alexei Kazanyk today finally left the Prosecutor General position. For all the progressive forces of Russia, and with true love for their homeland, I state before the Federative Council that I resign from the post of Prosecutor General of the Russian Federation. I categorically refute certain news in mass media that I came to the prosecutor's office because of high echelons of power and powerful bureaucrats. And therefore, the question is half resolved. The next session, which will begin the 6th in 2 weeks, will probably pose the question of the Prosecutor General. Again, we will present the question for voting to relieve the Prosecutor General Kazanyk. Considering his announcement, I think this question will be resolved positively, and we'll begin to examine the presentation of the President to appoint Ilyushenko. At today's Kremlin briefing, the center of attention of the press was the fate of Alexei Kazanyk. The position of the presidential side was expressed by the Presidential Secretary Vyacheslav Kostikov. In his opinion, the situation, which developed yesterday at the Federative Council, was attempted to be used by extremely radical forces. It is quite regrettable that the Federative Council itself has put itself into some sort of a corner or dead end. I don't think that an intentional attempt was made to cause confrontation with the President. The President, as we understand his tactics, did all the necessary moves and gestures in order that they should work toward the idea of civil agreement. I think that this incident will be exhausted only if Alexei Ivanovich has enough valor not to repeat that mistake which he has already once repeated. Discussion of all questions in the agenda of the State Duma was conducted in a heated battle exceeding the framework of discussion. Discipline in factions remains a severe problem for the LDPR and the Duma. Today, while discussing the legislative project on the status of deputies, the correction of the leader of the LDPR, Vladimir Zhirinovsky, was not passed to propose to relieve from duties those who don't submit to factional discipline. The question is realistic considering the exit from the LDPR of several deputies, including Vladimir Burzyuk. Today, during the break, Zhirinovsky, in one of the dark corners, attacked him with his fists and later broke the glasses and the tape recorder of the journalist who recorded the expressions of the LDPR leader on tape. All of this caused a tempest of disdain. As protest during Zhirinovsky's speech, the auditorium was left by deputies of the Russia's Choice faction. During discussion, the LDPR's deputies left the auditorium and an investigation was ordered. The LDPR deputy, Vyacheslav Mardich, noted, If the correction had been passed, a campaign would have begun where Zhirinovsky would have been able to deal with those whom he doesn't like. Today, the State Duma, despite its attendance in almost full membership, did not adopt the law in the Constitutional Court. Representatives of the LDP are abstained, and the Communist Party voted against. The work on the document will be continued. Representatives of the three committees of the State Duma at the press conference noted that the project of the budget presented by the government violates the Constitution regarding the budgets of the subjects of the federations, local self-rule, and also it does not decipher concrete statutes of expenditures. As it was stated, in such a form the project of the budget cannot be adopted. The deputies proposed to hold a meeting with the president and the chairman of the government in order to discuss paths to correct economic reforms. Sharp criticism of the oppositional factions was evoked by information from the Deputy Minister of Defense, Georgy Kondratyev, on joint Russian-American trainings at the Totsk polygon in the Orenburg district. The issue is joint peacekeeping actions. However, doubted was the feasibility of training in Russia, with fears for the security of the population. It was decided that committees of the Duma will enter their criticisms. The Parliament of Moldova ratified today the agreement on creating the CIS, with the changes ensuing from the legislation of the Republic. These changes regard maintaining independence of the Republic, its abstinence from military agreements, the creation of a united armed forces, and the ruble zone. And the last time the Parliament voted on the question of entering the CIS in August of last year, and then for the decision, 4 votes were lacking. In full swing is the campaign for the elections of national deputies for the Ukrainian Parliament. On the 10th of April is the second round of voting, and the Central Election Commission already is engaged in a new campaign, because for June scheduled are the elections of the President of Ukraine. The districts have been established, the limits of expenditures, and incidentally the presidential elections are a little bit more expensive than parliamentary ones by 1,600,000,000 Ukrainian karbovanetses. The President himself, Leonid Kravchuk, who initiated the early elections of both the Parliament and the President, more often expresses himself against the June elections, not so much because they've become burdensome for the budget and possibly there will be a vacuum of power, but probably because there is no constitutional law in existence defining what kind of president will the people elect and with what powers and functions. His own candidacy for the elections, Leonid Kravchuk does not intend to submit. But other famous leaders in the country, first of all Ivan Plush, Leonid Kuchma, and Alexander Moroz, who are called almost the future contenders, all unilaterally want the presidential elections to occur, and as it was adopted by the law of parliament. Not counting the Balkans, Crimea is the most meteorized territory in Europe. This is the opinion of the presidential advisor on military issues of Crimea, Valery Kuznetsov. Apart from the Black Sea Fleet and the war with Ukraine on the peninsula, concentrated are 500,000 Ukrainian soldiers and officers. Before the collapse of the Soviet Union, says Kuznetsov, the number of servicemen was 2 times less. On the site of the 8th border outpost of Piansk Border Patrol, because of an anti-tank mine, an armored vehicle blew up with a border troop nearby. The deputy commissioner of the post, Lieutenant Alexei Vladimirov, died and 4 border troops were injured. The investigation showed that into the barricade structure at the border a tunnel was furrowed, and through it from Afghanistan a diversionary group penetrated, which managed to install the anti-tank mine. Mass strikes and other acts of protests are the threat within the next few days. The deteriorating social-political situation of Vorkuta. The main reason is withholding of salaries and the absence of funds for further productivity. Itartas reports that almost daily in Vorkuta local acts of protest erupt. Today the collective of the Miners Division of Housing Communal Management announced the beginning of a 1-week warning strike. Today in Samara on the main square, there was a meeting, the first in the last 2 years. The initiator of it was the Federative Council of the Union of the District. They spoke mostly about the economy. At many large companies of the district, first of all the defense companies, since the beginning of the year salaries have not been paid and there are 2- and 3-day work weeks. Some companies have stopped altogether. The reason of many woes is one, mutual non-payments, which are counted in the trillions of rubles. As of the 1st of April, almost fully ceased is the entry entry of money into the local treasury. In the plans of the local administration is a temporary 50% freeze of salaries for budget sphere employees. Among demands sent to the President and Government of Russia, immediate regularization of joint accounts of companies, re-examination of taxation policies in favor of producers. Today in Nizhny Novgorod was the first meeting of shareholders of the Shareholders Society Gorky automobile plant, that same one which was delayed for almost half a year. And this was the length of the conflict connected with Czech privatization of the largest company of the country. Incidentally, the result of the pan-Russian Czech auction is still not known, but we won't enter details of the conflict. We told you about this earlier. We'll only say that here there was a clash of government organs, district administration, and a 120,000 labor collective. And this cannot be explained by the battle for a director's post between the former general director and the Minister of Automobile Industry, Nikolai Pugin, and the current general director, Boris Fedyayin. At the basis of the dispute, how to live and work in the market conditions and what to do so that the largest shareholders association could survive. And today, it seems, agreement was reached. Nikolai Pugin was elected the president of the Auctioneer Society Gas, and Boris Fedyayin again appointed the general director. And about the fact that there is work here to do, one can see from the exhibit of the promising models. Especially hopeful is the new 1.5-ton automobile and its modifications. It is to be offered for sale this year. Turbulent flooding in several districts of Russia is bringing great damage. The most serious situation has developed in the Volgograd district, where underwater are 600 square kilometers of area. From the disaster zone, almost 3,000 people have been evacuated. In Kalmykia, the powerful dam of a height of 2 meters cannot handle the water pressure, which from the Caspian Sea, strong winds are driving in. In the Ministry of Russia on Emergency Situations, they feel that if the dam does not withstand, within the next days under the threat of flooding will be brought areas of Dagestan, Kalmykia, and the Astrakhan area. According to the Oceanic Meteorological Center, flooding near Chelyabinsk 70 could lead to a washing away of radioactive substances into the Techa River. In the Rostov area, water is beginning to subside. The level of danger has passed. More than 1/3 of farms in Russia won't be able to conduct their spring plowing. This was stated today at the press conference in Moscow. The president of the Association of Peasant Businesses and Cooperatives of Russia, Vladimir Bashmachnikov. The reason is debts unpaid by the government for products delivered and the non-issuance of credits for spring field work. And this, given that the decision on allotting credits was adopted by both the Ministry of Finances and the Central Bank of the Federation. Vladimir Bashmachnikov accused, because of credits not reaching the farmers, of the apparatus of the Ministry of Finances and the Central Bank, who consciously are disrupting the sowing work in order to discredit the farmers' movement in Russia. Can the farmers still be helped? The credit mass exists, but there's no mechanism so that the farmer could receive. The land cannot be plowed, there are no financial deposits, the bank does not work with the farmer. We must find perhaps direct ministerial credits as it was previously. I'll note that if there is no success in helping the farmer, then more than 4 million hectares of plowland will grow weeds. At the most modest calculations, Russia will lose more than 1 million tons of grain. Russian nuclear power stations will be allotted credits to acquire fuel and provide extensions to liquidate their debts. This decision was adopted at today's council in the government of Russia. Chairing the meeting was the Vice Premier Alexis Kavets, noted that today nuclear stations work on emergency schedules, which is impermissible. The fact that at the factory The Star they began to dismantle another nuclear submarine was learned of in Primorye, and here the question arose, where do we put water infected by radiation? Because this sadly known tanker TNT-5, as many others, is filled to the brim with life-threatening wastes, and this in the center of the city, Bolshoi Kamen, not far from Vladivostok. Protection from the looming catastrophe is non-existent. Local projects on processing wastes is unreal, and Japanese aid is suspended in the air. And therefore, at the Star, the Interdepartmental Commission adopted a sensational decision on the need to dump into the Sea of Japan liquid radioactive waste, as it was before, because there is no other solution. In the future is the dismantling of 40 more nuclear submarines. However, the problem of the utilization of obsolete nuclear submarines case is more complex and dangerous than it seems at first glance. Despite the resolution of government from the 31st of August 1992, financing of construction in Nikolaev of a technical floating base to utilize submarines has been stopped, and this given the level today of preparedness of more than 60%. Frozen also is the construction of 2 special docks at Verkh Kherson in order to repair nuclear reactors. As of today, Russia has no docks where she could service nuclear submarines and nuclear reactors. In the north and in the Far East, there is more than 200 submarines which have accumulated, and from more than 1/3, used nuclear fuel has not been pumped out. Despite the fact that the reactors are idle, they must be constantly cooled off, and an accident at the cemetery of submarines could lead to another Chernobyl. And yet, among the Ukrainian shipyards, at one time there were 2 such needed docks. One is completed by 30%, the other by almost 65%. The debts of suppliers, 12 billion rubles, but up to 80% of the planned government allotments must return to Russia, to the same suppliers. The necessary funds today must obviously pass not by the statute of disarmament, but by the statute of environmental protection, or else the expenditures will be written off for emergency situations or catastrophes. At the Russian-Estonian border today, the attempt was foiled to deliver weapons. While inspecting an automobile en route to Estonia, 20 TT handguns were found and 10 laser gun sights. In the head command of the border troops of Russia, they feel that the Russian-Estonian border is becoming an active channel to deliver firearms and ammunition. About Russian weapons, there was always high praise heard, and this is affirmed at this exhibit, unique models. For example, have you ever seen this? A secret until recently. You yank it gently, and you get an automatic weapon. They're made for troops of special designation, unique weapons, underwater guns, semi-automatic weapons, silent guns, and automatic guns without silencers. Everything was here to be seen. In order to enter and pass, one had to go through 2 control inspection points. But now 3 main problems concern the country. Financing of weapons. They ask too much. The black market, you can buy almost anything. And the war with crime. This question was discussed today in the Federative Council. And so constructors produce the best weapons in the world, and the army is resupplied with them. But murders in Moscow increase and increase. Yesterday in the Federative Council, almost such an exhibit was shown because the question of the use of contemporary weaponry is becoming quite a problem. We just said that these weapons possibly will be on the black market or already is there. And what should we do in order that these weapons would be in the hands of those people who fight with crime? First of all, so that it doesn't land in the hands of the criminal elements, and I don't doubt that such weapons and special equipment is in the possession of organized groups and crime gangs. One must organize the necessary fight with crimes of this nature. Such weapons are not needed by the common small-time criminals. Such weapons are needed for criminal gangs so that the weapons do not reach these structures. First of all, the first condition is, of course, one must organize a battle with crimes of this nature. I know the employees of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the Federal Counterintelligence Services, they do know who these people are. They know almost all of them. The problem is that is there an organized effort aimed at them, and is there an aggressive battle of the law enforcing organs with these structures? I can say that there is not. There are such structures, but there is no organized, commensurate battle with them. One would like to see these items only at an exhibit, but alas. The rate of the American dollar to the ruble today stabilized. At today's trading in the Moscow Interbank Currency Exchange, it was fixed at the rate of 1,772 rubles per dollar. One must admit that the economic landscape in Russia endured cardinal changes. We're almost one of the first countries in the number of banks, and our citizens exchange their traditional bank book to reading of financial statements. Banks themselves are operating differently as well. More frequently, stiff competition in the financial market forces them to spend more time on creating supplementary services. Today, the official opening took place in Medvedkovo of the branch of Alpha Bank. This is not only a new building. Here, realized is the new philosophy system, the work with the client. equal service for ruble and currency accounts and deposits. Naturally, all of these services are from the European spectrum: currency exchange, collateral loans, automobile loans, private transactions, registration of new companies. The individual safes with 7 levels of protection, which you can rent solely or jointly. There was concern shown here for one more small detail: notary publics. Now, in order to receive notary services, any of them, you must simply forewarn of your arrival. To be solid, this is a worldview of a person who is raised with a high sense of dignity. This is a person oriented toward his own success. If he earns money, he wishes to increase them. If he seeks a bank, his criteria are service of the highest quality, comfort, efficiency, systematic operations. We work with these clients. It is pleasant when a solid bank considers you among its solid clients. The recently published rating of 100 Alpha Bank is included among the most reliable Russian banks. Become acquainted with it prior to entrusting your money to someone else. Today, the Prime Minister of Japan, Morihiro Hosokawa, announced his resignation, which was ratified by the government. The reason of this step, according to Hosokawa, was his decrease in the popularity of a cabinet and the scandal around the involvement of the head of state in financial machinations. The most probable successor, observers say, the current Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Tsutomu Hata. However, Tsutomu Hata said that he does not intend to submit his candidacy for the highest post, considering the realistic political situation in the country. The suspension of Parliament is not excluded. Declared disaster zones are 3 areas of the Croatian capital in close proximity to the army ammunition warehouse. There, fire broke out, which caused a series of powerful explosions. The situation near the warehouse remains threatening. The population is being evacuated from the danger zone. The Secretary General of the UN, Boutros-Ghali, condemned the murder of the Prime Minister of Rwanda and the Belgian soldiers of the UN mission contingent on aid to Rwanda. Boutros-Ghali is preparing a special report to the Defense Council on measures necessary to take to protect UN personnel. According to information agencies, after the tragic death of the presidents of East Africa countries Rwanda and Burundi, the situation in the Rwandan capital, Kigali, is out of control. And incidentally, is there power in Rwanda today? According to the UN representative of this country, Fred Eckert, on Wednesday, killed was the Prime Minister of the Republic, Agathon Uwilingana, and still not known is the fate of 3 members of the Rwanda Cabinet of Ministers, the chairman of the parliament and the chairman of the Constitutional Court. According to certain reports, they are also dead. In the bloody war in Kigali, yesterday, 17 Rwandan priests died. Victims of violence were 11 Belgian military peacekeeping forces from the UN. The UN mission on the aid to Rwanda has 2,500 soldiers, officers from various countries, including from Russia. At the basis of the bloody bath in Kigali is the unending strife between 2 basic ethnic groups, the Tutsis and the Hutus, who populate the territory of Rwanda and Burundi. The more prevalent Hutus, until recently, held key political posts in Rwanda, and in Burundi, except for the president, the Tutsis were in power. This ethnic group in both countries controls the army and comprises its bases. The presidential turbulence in Burundi in October of last year led to the inter-clan conflict, and it killed more than 100,000 people. Almost 1 million Burundians for some time found refuge in neighboring countries, including Rwanda, on whose territory currently the inter-ethnic clashes have seeped in. The situation in the Rwandan capital gives the impression that in the country, civil war has actually begun. Dragged into the armed clashes are thousands of people. In Kigali, chaos reigns. We continue our broadcast. As already reported, from the 11th to 13th of April will be the official visit of the President of Russia to Spain. The coming talks of the head of the Russian state in Madrid are intended to significantly elevate the level of the two-sided relations. The agreement on friendship and cooperation, which must be signed, will strengthen mutual trust, bring our people closer together, and allow them to know each other better. Today, only 65% of the polled Spaniards knew the name of the Russian president. And on Russian life, they know here only only through rare, colored in the darkest colors, publications in local press. The contents of articles under the drawings of the artist Raoul, who visited Moscow, which indicate the instability of the great nation and the sadness and woe of its people. Spaniards sympathize with our problems, and at the same time, they're cautious because of political instability in Russia and the complex relationships with the partners in the CIS. 2.5-day visit of the president are full of activity. Boris Nikolaevich will be hosted by the King Juan Carlos I, and he will speak with the chairman of the government, Felipe González, who unfailingly supports Yeltsin and his course. The itinerary of the visit foresees meetings with the national parliament in the autonomous province of Catalonia, the mayor's offices of Madrid and Barcelona. Candid talks with the major entrepreneurs may seriously influence the broadening of trade and economic ties, where possibly there are unlimited possibilities. Also, to expect some instant miracle from the visit is unrealistic. One must also not build illusions regarding the generous credits. To finance Russian reforms, Spain has no intention. It has its own problems. Now, the main is to lay the foundation for concrete and detailed joint work for future years. The perspective of the signing of an agreement between Russia and the European Union were discussed in Moscow by Viktor Chernomyrdin, the member of the European Union Commission on Foreign Political Affairs, Hans Vanderbroek. The talks on this question had changed pace frequently and were lengthy. However, now, according to one of the participants of the meeting, the sides will attempt to make the final jump to achieve the agreement, which, in the opinion of Moscow, must provide equitable cooperation with the West. The preparations for the agreement between Russia and the European Union were also the center of attention of talks of Andrei Kozyrev and Vanderbroek. The most serious problems remain the question of the activities of foreign banks in Russia, which is basically resolved, and the trade of nuclear fuel. The quotas which the European Union insists upon don't please the Russian side. But as Vanderbroek stated today in an interview to our program, the European Union strives to find compromises and to conclude the agreement. The presidents of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia proposed to the head of the Russian state, Boris Yeltsin, to personally and openly announce that including Latvia among those countries where Russia intends to create a military base was a mistake. They insist that Russia should confirm her earlier taken upon obligation to quickly and finally withdraw its army from Latvia and Estonia. At the same time, the head of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Andrei Kozyrev, unilaterally stated that the question of the presence of Russian military bases will be decided in consideration of the positions of the countries of the CIS and near foreign countries and those countries which express such an interest. Israeli forces will finally leave the Gaza sector and the city of Jericho in the end of April, if all goes well. This was stated by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Israel, Shimon Peres. According to him, probably the leader of the PLO, Yasser Arafat, will arrive in Jericho in the beginning of May. Israeli leadership adopted extreme security measures in order to prevent acts of terrorism by the Palestinian extremists. And at the same time, the Islam movement Hamas, which claimed responsibility for the recent explosion of the mined automobile in the city of Fula, threatened to turn into a hell the day of Israeli independence, which will fall on the 14th of April. Today on occupied territories, clashes continued between Palestinians and Israeli soldiers. Where was the police looking and what was it doing? This rhetorical question was asked by many Parisians, either eyewitnesses of the events or watching on television the scenes of violence and looting during the recent student protests in Paris. Hundreds of broken store windows, looted stores, tens of incinerated and defaced automobiles, and 120 injured policemen. This is the result of the last, initially peaceful demonstration of thousands of youths. But the participants, I should say right away, in their overwhelming majority, are not guilty. The group of young marauders from Parisian suburbs, around 1,000 of them, using the moment, penetrated the columns of demonstrators from where they conducted their attacks on the cordons of law officers and their raids on stores. 3,000 policemen were not able to control the looters, seeking refuge among the demonstrators. The police themselves avoided the extreme measures in order to avoid the worst. If an order to advance had been given, one would have had to mourn not broken store windows and material losses, but perhaps human losses. This was the explanation of the restraint by the Minister of Internal Affairs, Chaproscois. And so it was without casualties, luckily. But the damage, 80 million francs, will have to be paid by insurance companies and the government to the victims. Today, the Sistine Chapel of the Vatican was presented to viewers in its initially created beauty. The 30 years of restorational work of the frescoes of the famous Renaissance masters has been completed, foremost the genial Michelangelo. His grandiose Judgment Day during the last 4 years was draped from view. The restoration of the Michelangelo frescoes has taken 15 years. The triumphant Mass in the Sistine Chapel of the Vatican was served by John Paul II. In Moscow, underway are the Danish National Aid Days. We have become accustomed. If people gather and there are microphones, that means it's a demonstration. But here at the All-Russian Exhibit Center, more than 5,000 veterans of war and labor gathered not for a demonstration but to celebrate. And this celebration was organized for them by two benevolent societies, the Danish National Aid and the Russian Center Blagovist. All this week in Moscow were the days of Danish National Aid. Gifts from the Danes went to children, orphans, lonely elderly from retirement homes. The Danish delegation managed to visit the Moscow suburb in the Volokholamsk area. The porridge here from army kitchens, of course symbolic. For those who came here, this is still a reminiscence of war. It has already been 50 years that the war ended. And how many times I had a craving for such porridge, soldier's porridge, and I can't seem to make it properly. Then it obviously was watery in order to dilute it and make more porridge. And so they came, of course, not for gifts, although each one did receive a package, but because it's a celebration, because they're together, and simply it's attention. And now that is a rare and precious gift. A gift can be called the concert of the three most famous tenors of the world, who will mark the opening of the World Soccer Championships 1994. Today, confirming their participation in the concert were Luciano Pavarotti, Placido Domingo, and Jose Carreras. They will perform arias from operas, popular songs from various countries in 9 languages, including Russian. About the rest of the news of the sports world after the advertisement, Daria Chervoninka will tell you about. All the best. Good evening. The most current themes today are, of course, hockey problems and decisions. But first, information about the first semi-final matches of the International Hockey League Cup. The Moscow Dynamos in Chelyabinsk won against the Tractor 4-2. In Petersburg, the local army team lost to the International Hockey League champion, Tolyatti, 1-2. And now about the problems. Today, the 8th of April, there was an unscheduled conference of the Russian Federation of Hockey. 152 delegates from 30 regions of Russia, with only one abstaining, adopted the following resolution. To recognize the work of the Federation unsatisfactory and dismissed from post the President Vladimir Petrov. Instead of him, elected was Valentin Sich, the leader of the group of the Olympic Committee of Russia, Lillehammer 94, and also the President of the Hockey Association of Russia, which on the 8th of April ceased to exist. At the conference, the president of the NOK spoke, Vitaly Smirnov, who noted that the incompetence and the omissions in the work of Vladimir Petrov led to the problems in the International Hockey League agreement, which influenced the level of Russian hockey. Smirnov also said the recent investigation by tax police established serious financial violations in the financial business of the Hockey Federation of Russia. And now, hockey news from across the ocean. Paul Bure in the NHL Championships brought victory to his team Vancouver Canucks over San Jose Sharks with a score of 3-2. In this match, Bure scored 2 goals and became the leader among the offense with 58 goals now. And the captain of the Los Angeles Kings, Wayne Gretzky, refused to play in the World Hockey Championships in Italy. The reason for the refusal are yet unknown. And the star of the youth teams of Russia and the Portugal Sports Club, Sergei Sherbakov, who in December in an automobile accident received a serious spinal injury, for the first time walked 20 meters supporting himself on a walker. During this training, friends and trainers were present. Many soccer fans, I think, will also rejoice for Sergei Sherbakov. Good evening. According to the Oceanic Meteorological Center, the weather in North European Russia will, as previously, be defined by a low-pressure area, the center of which tomorrow will be over Finland. The warm air coming from the south will reach Murmansk, Arkhangelsk, Karelia, and the south areas of the Republic of Komi. Here it will be partly cloudy with some rain in places and wet snow. At night, -2 +3, during the day, +4 +9 degrees. The cyclone, which passed over Belarus and Baltic countries, is moving toward North Finland. Therefore, the northwest, central, and central Chernozem areas of Russia will be under the influence of atmospheric fronts, and they will bring cloudy weather with rains. At night, +1 +6, during the day, +5 +10. In the Volgovetsk area, in the central of Volga, there will be the influence of the anticyclone, the center, which is over northern Kazakhstan. It will be windy and dry during the night, +1 +4, during the day, +5 +9. In the Baltic countries, Kaliningrad area, and Belarus, the weather will improve, pressure will improve, rains will cease. At night, +1 +6, during the day, +7 +12. In Ukraine, Moldova, it will be partly cloudy without precipitation. At night, +4 +7, during the day, up to +13, 18 degrees. In the southern areas of Russia, it is cloudy. There will be some brief rains and some places thunderstorms. On the lower Volga, Kalmykia, it is windy and dry. At night, 3 to 8. During the day, 13, 18. Same weather is expected on the Black Sea coast of the Caucasus. Beyond the Caucasus, it is cloudy with some rains and possible thunderstorms. At night, 5, 10. During the day, +13, +18. In Petersburg tomorrow, it is partly cloudy. At night and in the morning, rain. The winds are from the south to southwest to 5 to 8 meters per second. And at night, +1 +3. During the day, +5 +7 degrees. In Moscow, partly cloudy without much precipitation. The winds from the south, 2 to 5 meters per second. And at night, +1 +3. During the day, +8 +10. And this is all about the weather for tomorrow. Goodbye.
Теперь в любом почтовом отделении России вы можете купить дипломат. Все почтовые отделения России. Наш уставный фонд 100 миллиардов рублей. Купи себе немного Олби.